The Santa Fe National Forest is a protected area in northern New Mexico. It was established in 1915 and covers over 1.5 million acres. It's not clear to me how many visitors it attracts every year, but the National Forest website states that the forest holds some beautiful views and many fun activities for its guests. What they don't tell you about this area are the eerie disappearances that have occurred from 1951 to 2009, so let's explore them. Mel Nadel was 61 years old when he disappeared on the 6th of September 2009 from Elk Mountain in the Santa Fe National Forest, New Mexico. Specifically, this incident occurred not far from Pecos while Mel was hunting with two friends of his. He was well armed at the time and had the ability to look after himself, but his primary hunting technique was to use a bow. It's important to know right off the bat that Mel had incredible experience in the outdoors and with hunting. He had been to Elk Mountain a lot, and this was one of his favourite places to hunt. Mel was also familiar with becoming lost, as he had done so once in the past, years before this incident took place. He made a mistake in the Jemez Mountains and things got a bit hairy. He became panicked after realising he couldn't find his way, and through firing into the air, his friends were able to locate him. In some ways, obviously, because of the outcome, this incident was probably good for Mel in some sense, because he became much more cautious after this took place. He didn't hunt again without a GPS, apparently. After that, he only ever hunted nearby the camp and wouldn't stray too far from it. To further this point actually, Mel had a knee injury which also prevented him from travelling very far as he couldn't move long distances anymore, and it also needed to be wrapped up that day. It seems that as a general rule, what he actually did instead was to find a quiet place he could camouflage in and wait for prey to arrive and pass by. At 4:30 PM on the day of Mel's disappearance, he and two of his friends all split up from the campsite. It's never made clear exactly how far Mel was supposed to stray from the camp, but from what I can gather, it was supposed to be somewhere between 150 and 300 yards away. Something during this short walk would go horribly awry because he would never be seen again, and to this day it's still not known what happened. Mel was realised as missing when his two friends, as originally planned, arrived back to the campsite as darkness began to set in. They sat there, I imagine, somewhat confused because Mel should have been the first to arrive back given his close proximity. The two friends sat down together and waited for him, presumably wondering if Mel might be finishing up. Though as time went on and it got darker and darker, they began to panic. The pair set out to retrieve Mel, wandering off in the same direction he took initially, but they found no sign of him at all. They were shouting and calling his name loudly, but they would never receive a reply. It's at this point that they knew that they were in over their heads, and they were able to contact the authorities and report what had happened here. Just something important to note is that outside of Mel's knee, he was actually a very fit man. Unfortunately, heart problems did run in his family, and it seems that he wanted to offset these problems and would inspire him to become a black belt in Taekwondo, which is an impressive feat and shows his dedication to his craft. According to charlieproject.org, Mel left his 2001 Jeep Cherokee with the New Mexico license plate number blank near the campsite with most of his gear locked inside, including his backpack, cell phone and GPS unit. He normally carried the GPS with him while he hunted to keep from getting lost. Given Mel's prior experience with getting lost and the sheer panic he felt with that strikes me as a bit odd. We all have our moments of absent-mindedness, but when you have experienced some trauma, even in very minor cases, you tend to be very aware of the details surrounding it. Now of course, you can't go throwing wild accusations around or anything like that, and there was no evidence of foul play or anything of that nature, but I do hope, and I'm sure that people were questioned appropriately, but Occam's razor would state that he probably just forgot it in the Jeep, since that makes the least amount of assumptions. I found this particularly interesting also. Dogs tracked Mel's scent for about 50 yards from the camp, down the trail he said he would use. His loved ones stated he had become lost once before, and after that experience, he preferred to stick close to the campsite. Mel's family doesn't believe he left of his own accord, and police can't find any evidence of foul play in his disappearance. He is presumed to have become lost or injured in the wilderness. Okay, a couple of things there. Again, it strikes me as odd that the dogs would track Mel for 50 yards before completely losing the scent. Reasonably speaking, given his situation, he actually shouldn't have been too much further from that point, so where did he go and what even happened? It's like he randomly vanished from the face of the earth in that moment down the trail. There were many dogs present in this search, and searching parties scattered in all directions from the point where the scent was lost, but they never found anything, and his scent was never found again either. It's been 13 years now, and no signs have ever presented themselves. His equipment has never been stumbled upon, nor his clothing or anything else. It's also interesting that his family stated that they don't believe that he left of his own accord, but this entails a couple of things. Firstly, they may disagree with the official conclusion that he had simply got lost in the wilderness, because that statement, if taken a certain way, could suggest that they don't even believe that he's there anymore. That's speculation on my part, of course, but you could hardly blame someone for thinking that way. You have a man that can't walk long distances, had a bad knee, and told people he wouldn't be very far from the camp down the trail. If he had walked off into the wilderness, what could have possessed him to take this action? Did he become spooked? Was there a third party present? Did an animal get a bit close for his liking? His friends never heard him fire any rounds this time, and he was armed at the time as said. I just want to make this clear again, that this is mostly just a thought experiment now. It's all speculation, because the problem is that there was quite literally no evidence of anything whatsoever. Now, you can place Mel on that trail, at least to begin with, because the dogs are able to follow his scent down it for a short distance. Why did it abruptly stop? What caused that? Was that the moment something happened? As said, there was nothing in the area to insinuate that he had come to harm or anything like that. So what happened to Mel Nadel, and where did he go? In early June of 1951, an interesting incident was unfolding in the rugged Sangre de Cristo Mountains, roughly 6 miles away from the very location Nell disappeared from. This disappearance involved 3 youngsters who all went missing together. The McGee and Cross families were lifelong friends who spent a lot of time in each other's presence, travelling, hiking, inviting one another into their homes, etc. They had decided to travel this mountain together along with their children to holiday with one another, but something would go awry very soon into the trip. Around lunchtime on the 7th of June 1951, the mothers took the kids for what they thought would be a pleasant picnic. However, more than 200 men searched the mountains today for 3 small children who wandered away from a family picnic. Weary after fanning through the tortuous area with flashlights and lanterns all night, the group was joined this morning by low-flying planes and men on horses. Missing in the nearly 2-mile-high Santa Fe ski basin area are Larry McGee, 7, his sister Jeanette, 5, along with Stephen Cross, 3. The mothers spent about 3 hours frantically searching for them before telephoning to Santa Fe for help. Mobile searchlight trucks played beams on low-hanging clouds throughout the night, hoping to attract them. So specifically, what appears to have happened here is that the 3 went off a short distance to play together. Clearly, had gotten out of sight of the mothers, who can't have thought much of it at first. A few minutes later, after realising they can't see or hear them anymore, the mothers go to check on them, but there was no trace of them anywhere. Now, thankfully, the three were found after 28 hours of searching, but not without some surprises. 3 small children were found tired, hungry, and thirsty, but otherwise unharmed tonight after 28 lonely hours in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. On hearing the news, their parents burst into tears. While hundreds of searchers trudged the jagged, steep mountains with lanterns and flashlights last night, the 3 slept in a hollow log. "I took good care of them," 7-year-old Larry boasted. "Once, I heard someone yelling, but I didn't answer because I thought they were big gorillas." Larry effectively made the point that when they wandered away, they were non-physically pushed in one direction because they heard, or thought that they were hearing, and I quote, "big gorillas around them." State Police Chief Joe Roach radioed that none of the 3 suffered any ill effects from the 45° or 7°C night temperature. They were only clad in t-shirts and blue jeans when they wandered away. The youngsters were first sighted in Box Canyon, about 3.5 miles from the spot where they disappeared. They were spotted by 3 airmen, and I believe this was actually from the air too, rather than on the ground, and they then relayed their whereabouts. Though I'm not certain on that because the articles are a little vague here. In any case, they were found over 3.5 air miles away, though they had probably travelled more like 5 or 6 miles because you can't walk these areas in a straight line. The distance they travelled surprised some of the searchers, who also made the point that to reach that spot, they had forded a dangerous stream that they were lucky not to have been swept away by. Now, another bit of oddness is that it seems that the 3 also couldn't decide on whether they were being followed or chased by gorillas or a bear. Larry had said that they kept seeing a bear trailing them up the slopes and that it was tiring to go up. News outlets chalk this up to an overactive imagination, and while that certainly may be true, it's odd because these kids were scared of something, because whatever it was, or whatever they thought it was anyway, it had frightened them enough to not reply to what may have been actual calls from the searchers at some point. Larry was adamant about this too, the idea that they'd been chased by a bear. As weird as that sounds, by the way, it's not unheard of. I have a video dedicated to unusual disappearances in which children would later relate that a bear was involved somehow, either stating that the bear was looking after them or taking them to the place that they would later be found, etc. I'll link it in the description and in the top right now if you want to open a new tab. Anyway, that's basically the end of the paper trail, and there was no further mention of this disappearance that I could find. But to sum it up, the distance they'd travelled and this so-called dangerous stream that they'd forded surprised the searchers. Alongside their tales of big gorillas or bears following them, I'm sure that creeps out some of the people looking for them. Whatever the case may be though, at least they were found and in good health. Now, let's explore the final disappearance. Emma Trasp, 71 years old at the time of disappearance, went missing inside the Santa Fe National Forest at the end of August 1998. Emma was a bit of an explorer and traveller and had been all around the world, visiting many of the world's wonders such as Machu Picchu in Peru. Despite getting on in life, Emma was an expert hiker and had gathered many skills throughout her life as this was a frequent hobby of hers. However, something would go wrong on the 31st of August 1998. Volunteer search and rescue teams were combing through thickets and steep ravines in the Santa Fe National Forest on Tuesday in an effort to find Emma, last seen about 2 weeks ago. A helicopter and an airplane joined the ground searchers. She apparently took a wrong turn and got stuck on a rough road in the northern New Mexico forest. So right off the bat, the earliest reports I could find of this incident, Emma had already been missing for 2 weeks. The problem here seems to have been that at the time she had left her daughter's home in Oklahoma and was heading to a retreat at the Lady of Guadalupe Abbey Monastery in Pecos. It seems that she was going to be staying there for a while, and as a result of that, it appears as though everyone had just assumed that she was there and everything was fine. While on the way to this monastery though, there was a problem. Emma's car was discovered abandoned and high-centred on a remote and rough road in a heavily wooded area of the Santa Fe National Forest. Most of Trasp's belongings, including her purse and cell phone, were locked inside. Emma was last seen when she stopped for gas in Santa Rosa on August 31. To get to the monastery from Interstate 25, she should have taken the NM63, but drove instead on County Road 63A, and then turned on the rough forest road that leads to the Glorietta Fire Tower. "This is a mistake is all we can figure," Mary Freitas, incident commander, said. Emma had been particularly unfortunate here and took the wrong road. Presumably still thinking that she was on the right track and in the correct place, the car got stuck on a dirt road, and then she hiked in the direction that she thought would take her to the monastery, or at least to civilization. Obviously this was wrong, and it looks like she'd made her way further into the Santa Fe National Forest and got lost. "We're hoping she found a source of water, and may be in a safe location," said Mary Freitas. "It's hard to say what she might have done." Freitas said that the biggest problem is the lack of tracks, especially since 2 weeks have passed. "If people don't expect you to be missing, it makes our job a whole lot harder after they've been missing for 2 weeks, she said. Well, no one ever really expects to go missing, or expects another person to be missing, but what she's really getting at is the fact that presumably everyone just assumed that she was safely at the monastery. It's not even clear to me what triggered the search. Because the first article is 2 weeks since she was last seen, I'm assuming that when she never came home, the report was put in, as opposed to people becoming concerned after she wasn't answering calls, which actually is odd in and of itself because for whatever reason she made the conscious decision to leave the phone in the car. That, or she just forgot, I suppose. Though after the car becomes stuck in the road, you might think the first thing you'd do is grab your phone, so that's strange to me. I'm not sure what was going on there. Perhaps it was a heat of the moment panic or something like that. It wasn't until Sunday that the first clue of Trasp's whereabouts was reported to state police by a hunter who had stumbled upon the woman's car 8 days before. The hunter didn't notify authorities until he learned that they were looking for a woman who may have been lost in the Pecos area. The one thing that the searchers thought Emma had going in her favour was that she was very knowledgeable in regards to the outdoors and was in very good physical shape for her age without any medical problems. There really wasn't much in the way of reporting on this disappearance because the next article came over a month later on the 1st of November. The New Mexico State Police and Crime Stoppers have issued a statewide request for information on the whereabouts of Emma Trasp, missing since the first week of September. The road that her car got stuck on leads to Glorietta Baldy Peak and is not far from the monastery. It was reported to authorities and all searches have proven unsuccessful. Weirdly, and I don't even know what was going on here, but the next report came a whole year after this on the 28th of October 1999. State police are renewing a search for Emma Trasp, who officials believe vanished in a northern New Mexico forest last year. Her phone was still inside the small car, but her purse was not. There were no signs of a struggle around the locked car, and no footprints were found in the area. More than 100 people on horseback and on foot, aided by dogs and helicopters, found no sign of Emma during the search. That was the end of the paper trail, but you can't help but feel that Emma was let down by the press a bit here because there was barely any coverage at all, and so it's not clear how many people were even aware that there was a problem. Ultimately, to this day, no trace of Emma has ever been found. It's not clear why there were no footprints near the car, though because it was 2 weeks after she abandoned the car, it's possible that weather conditions were to blame for that. Though as said before, it was an odd decision that she left her phone behind after the car got stuck on the dirt road, I don't understand that at all. Could that indicate that she was spooked or panicked by something? Obviously, we'll never know that now, but it's an interesting question nevertheless. I don't like ending these videos on a negative, though that seems unavoidable here because I can't imagine it's very likely that there will ever be closure in regards to this disappearance. With that being said though, I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of the disappearances discussed. And I'd also just like to take the time to thank you for watching, and a big thank you to the patrons who've been running around and disappearing on the screen. If you found the video interesting, then please do leave a like, hit the bell, and subscribe if you haven't already. If not, then feel free to leave a dislike. I'm just looking for your honest opinion either way. I hope that you've had a great day, or evening depending on where you are, and I'll see you in the next one. Be safe guys. Peace.